you suggest that now today, even for young people, though, of kind of working with more senior leaders, taking those moments, those coffees?
I never really believed I had a mentor. I never approached anyone like to be a mentor, but I connected with a lot of people. So there were people in my first job that had a game night, and they played these war games, and they were trying to take over world domination, game like Risk.
Like Risk.
Yeah. And I had no idea about the game, but they liked me joining because they could always beat up on me. But in the meantime, I was hearing them talk about their investments and talking about some of the things they were doing at work. And then another thing I did a lot of was playing on sports teams after work. And I still had a good amount of speed and played on flag football teams and basketball teams. And my job at Coca-Cola was actually connected to a guy who used to be the quarterback. He was the hiring manager when I was being considered for Coca-Cola. So you can anticipate how that, well, we had a decent relationship playing football, so that carried over when I saw him many years later in that interview process.
I think also what was really fascinating even about your career was, after P&G made the decision to move, I believe, to Coca-Cola.
Right.
And, coming into there, that whole concept of, taking on new challenges and new risks. I think that there's a lot of students today, that they kind of plan out a lot of their future. So they go 2 years after school, I'm going to go to business school, or then I'm going to get my master's, and then I'm going to go do X, Y, Z. I was kind of hoping maybe you could talk a bit about taking different career risks and kind of taking a chance on different things and how that helped you.
Yeah, I think that was essentially how I got on the radar beyond just being a good old regular employee. And it started when there was a globalization push at P&G, and they asked people, would you be willing to go to other countries? And I signed up and said I would go to these two countries. And I ended up going to South America. And I went there when an advisor of mine was telling me, don't go there because I would lose a lot of support. I was doing well where I was at. He was like, why would you go there? And for me, it was clear that globalization was the future. And if I wanted to contend for higher positions, I intuitively realized if I could check that box. And so there was a lot of uncertainty of what would be on the other side. But it was a company that was well established. I didn't perceive risk. I probably should have, especially when my advisor, who was an HR guy, he was saying don't do it because I was on a good track where I was. But I took that risk because I thought it was the right thing to do for the long term versus the short term.
And then maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the actual culture here at Kimberly-Clark. I think that also be really interesting because there's a really big, I think, transition and focus over the last 5-10 years towards this sustainability goal and objective. And I know that's something that's very focused for your own. And that's part of the reason why you actually came back from retirement to do it.
Right. Well, one part of the culture is the heritage of technology as the foundation of the business. So this business was built on technology insights. So for a technical person, that's a good place to be. And then I would say the culture is nurturing in some ways that allows technology to flourish in the context of that balanced portfolio. In other words, we have people with 10 months, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. You'll see all of those time horizons in this ecosystem. And obviously, when you have that blend, you get the sage wisdom of the 40-year employee with the ambitiousness of a 10-month employee and the reality check of a 10-year employee. But that culture of having that multi-generational footprint and people that know the ins and outs of the business, when they're asleep, they can wake up and immediately tell you what to do, versus those that are trying to understand the business and maybe turning some new stones and helping us think about adaptation of new ways of solving the problems that our consumers have. So that culture of blending all the culture together across time horizons and geography is what I like.
How do you, I think you mentioned a great point, the ambition of the young coming in, right? How as a young person in your first role, those first 6 months, how do you demonstrate that you have the drive, but not, again, maybe piss off the person 10 years up that, hey, this is a kind of a person coming in here trying to break things. So
yeah, most newbies will quickly learn to have a little humility because there's some things that take time to learn. It's not like you studied overnight and you can go take the test and pass the test. So, and a lot of that learning is experiential, going to factories, working in the lab, and it takes time. What they get the benefit of is once again, the teachers amongst us who can help them through that process. But at the same time, they are held to a high standard of certain deliverables. Here you're learning, but when you're new, you still have to deliver things that really stretch you. So the combination of delivery and learning in an environment where you can get support. One of the big things I remember coming out of college is it's all open book. I don't have to, do like this and not look to the side. It's all about
it's not time constrained.
It's very different than what my education was. You got to keep your head down, don't look left or right. You have to do it yourself for the most part. Yeah, there were labs where there were teams, but even that was heavily weighing on the individual contribution. In real life, it's a team sport. It's more of a team sport in the industry than it is about individual achievement.